So we talked to Ann over there, and we talked, first of all, about the number, COP28. This is the 28th of these. So we started off asking her, why is this going to be different from the first 27?
I think that COP28 is going to be more realistic. I think it's already more realistic than previous COPs. And what I mean by that is we have already had some announcements leading up to this COP. We had the meeting in California between the USA and China regarding cooperation around more renewables, fewer fossil fuels, and given that we're both the two largest emitters of fossil fuels, that's promising. I think you're going to also see more announcements out of various countries about commitments they will make, either through funds or through taxes or various mechanisms to try to help here. And I also think that you have the business community arriving, seeking to be both realistic and to cooperate and to look for cooperation with governments. So that's pretty different than we've had. Less ideological, more practical.
This is a global problem, obviously, addressed by countries around the world. Some countries have more resources to address it than others, and that's been an ongoing issue about the extent to which some of the wealthier countries need to give some funds to the lower income countries. How much progress can we make on climate overall for the globe if we do not, in fact, give significantly more resources to the lower income countries to address their problems?
Well, this issue about the global south or emerging markets and developing economies is a real one. And the industrialized nations need to do something in this regard. But I think what you're going to see is the multilateral development banks, but particularly the World Bank, is seeking to find a way to do more in the area of lending, blended finance. And when I talk about blended finance, that means governments, businesses working together with philanthropies to try to all crowd in more money. I think this idea of voluntary carbon markets, which has been controversial, is becoming perhaps seen as more as a necessity than it has before. And some of the NGOs like VCMI, which is Voluntary Carbon Markets Integrity Initiative, but a leading NGO in this space, has already indicated opening the, if you will, opening the aperture so that companies can use carbon credits.
And you, in my experience, were early on in the voluntary carbon markets. You've been an advocate of that on this program and elsewhere for some time. It raises the question between the business community, as you said, and the governments on the other hand. To what extent will the markets and technology actually drive this almost irrespective of what governments do?
What I'd say is we're seeing such progress with technology being applied in a big way to EV cars, to solar. You know, they say 4/5 of the new energy that's coming online is renewable. Now, that's great, but of course, what's in place now is 80% is fossil fuel. So this is a lot of switching out kind of midair, where you have new energy being more renewable, but old energy being largely fossil fuels. EV being an affordable car for the future, but people are still driving gas cars for now. It just, there's a lot of transitioning happening, but I'm very optimistic because the prices have come down. So I think these are very practical issues. Now combine that with governments and NGOs who are trying to come up with realistic solutions, and they need concessionary capital. They need first loss money. This is where I think that the voluntary carbon markets can help, because companies that are making every effort to get to either carbon neutrality or net zero nonetheless can't get there because the infrastructure isn't in place or technology isn't in place. And they can use credits to help with these larger issues, and particularly in the global south. So these are practical solutions rather than ideological. And I think we have to all recognize that transparency, strong disclosures and credits in this case that are incredibly important.
And as you know, if we back in the United States simply believed what we saw in our media here, we might conclude we're losing some momentum in the private initiative on ESG investing. That was really had a lot of investment momentum. In fact, just this week, GM has reallocated some capital, saying, well, maybe we won't go quite as fast in EVs because there's not the take up. Is that right? As somebody who really knows this from the inside, are what we're seeing in the mass media correct, that we are losing momentum?
I do not think we're losing momentum in terms of climate. I do think there have been some headwinds regarding ESG and impact investing. But when you're talking about climate investing, I think that we are actually, I'm quite optimistic. Now, whether GM is slowing down their EV production may have more to do with the number of cars they can put out in a period of time and the fact that people are still driving their traditional gas-fueled cars, and we're in a inflationary moment. People are looking at their pocketbooks, and they're maybe less apt to buy a new car. So I think for practical reasons, we may be slowing down there. But the technology is in place, and we're seeing real momentum. So I'm pretty optimistic. I feel that we shouldn't mistake political issues of ESG with the progress we're making technologically on climate.